the fact that there is so much disagreement isn't necessarily a sign that things are bad, but it's a sign that things are good, because people are able to go to the extremes and say what they feel, and actually bring ideas to the table that in other countries that might not necessarily be allowed. So divisive, division. It's a word that we hear and we automatically assume that it's bad, but when argument in itself leads to compromise, so without the argument we can't have compromise. So what is postmodernism? I think postmodernism is accepting that fact that we aren't going to agree with the other side, but being able to come to a healthy compromise is important.
I would contradict that with postmodernism. Actually, someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I want an abortion," and you say, "Since you believe that,
Yeah.
I don't believe that, but that's cool that you believe that. You can go for that." What is that actually doing? Nothing. It's like, you can do that as long as it doesn't affect me. You can join the military. You can go kill people. But as long as that doesn't affect me, I'm cool with it. So it's like, in my opinion, that's what's chaining the prisons to everything. Even if you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm a Republican. You can be a Democrat. That's okay. Or any kind of moral situation, even religion. Go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. I'm not big on terms and phrases, just an old guy. But my experience with what I see in the media is there's a fascist attitude to mostly conservatives. It's like our argument, every other argument is acceptable but the conservative argument. So I think that there's a shift from what you're saying that, I have a couple of kids that are in college now, and they're almost stealthy in how they share their views because it's overwhelming liberal. In fact, Britt Humes of Fox News did a study, and there are a lot more, almost like 8-to-1 liberals and professors across the universities in this country. So, but I think in my generation coming up, regardless, though there were always different denominations and the theologies always vary, but lying was wrong across the board. Sodomy was wrong across the board. Abortion was wrong across the board. There was not a lot of debate. There was a consensus, a moral consensus, and that has drastically changed. When I went to school, my teacher knew that stealing was wrong. The barber knew stealing was wrong. You understand what I'm talking about? And there's been a huge change. But again, I go back to the fact that what established the benchmark is a nation under God. And there was a prayer to a genetic God, and that worked in the conscience of people, especially young kids. If mom and dad aren't seeing me, maybe God is looking. And that had a lot of effect. So it goes back to that, I think.
Is just what you said. Look, if you want to abort your baby, that's cool with you. Who am I to say what you think is wrong?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a classic thing that's been historic for all time. God is a God of absolutes. He really has laid down some very, not huge many laws, but some very fundamental principles for life. And what has man tried to do ever since then? Trying to get away from that. Men will call good evil and evil good. They will, condemn you for you'll be persecuted in this world for standing for righteousness. And what we've tried to do as a society is to kick God out. The further we get away from God, the less our sins sting us. Our conscience becomes dulled. And so that is why postmodernism has become so prevalent, because now I can say that no matter what you think, you're good. There are no right and wrongs, and that's perfectly the design of the enemy. But we've been battling that forever. It just comes becomes a new terminology.
New packages.
Right, and when you have division is just going to be there. Because what good does light have with darkness, or darkness with light? I mean, you're gonna hold up a standard and people aren't gonna like it. And so there will be inherent division, but there's a flip side to that with the postmodernist person, is to say to them, hey, that's cool, let me hear what you think. And then you, being grounded in your faith, speak words of life to that person. That is what changes the heart and gets them thinking, because God's word is true.
And I believe
No, I'm
that's
sorry,
that's
for
what
1 second.
America is built on. You know,
Yes.
it's not really like, it's not built on, you know, oh, you can do that. It's built on, you know, compromise. But what is actual compromise is exactly what you said. Go ahead.
It's not compromise, actually. It's not. What you're talking about is not compromise. If I'm having a discussion, you like abortion, I don't like it, but that's cool. That's not a compromise. I'm not getting anything out of that. That's not a compromise for anybody. So it's about making steps. If you want to bring people onto your side of belief,
Mhm.
if you want people to follow God, then what you can't be a crusader. It doesn't work.
Mhm.
You need to make compromises with the person to eventually bring them over. If
Right.
you're just gun-ho about it, it's not going to work.
Right.
So we need to make compromises, and we need to, start with understanding the other side so that we can bring them into the fold.
Yeah, you're not saying sell the truth out. You're saying
No,
win the ear
Yes.
so that truth could
we need to
seep
be
in.
rational
Sure.
about it.
That makes sense.
Yes.
And compromise should definitely remain with a Christ-centered perspective. One more, or go ahead.
I would like to